Hello everybody, this is Adam for RealHomeRecording.com. I think it's time to get back to basics. I've been getting a lot of recent comments on some of the basic Reaper tutorial videos that I did not go in depth enough. So I'm going to revisit this topic of the basics of Reaper usage, but add a little bit more. And I'm going to do it from the very start of a Reaper 5 installation. Now, before I even open the program up, I'm going to change one thing, and that is the theme that's being used, because I love default 3.0. It's the version that I started on back in 2009, and it just works well for me. The other thing I'm going to do so that I have MP3 usage is drag and drop lame encoder 64 from my Reaper 4 folder to this Reaper 5 folder. Okay, now I should be able to start everything as I want it to be. Alright, so the first thing it's going to say is, would you like to set up your hardware? Absolutely, because if you don't, it ain't going to work. So, if I weren't doing a screen capture, I would choose ASIO. And hopefully that didn't throw me out of the screen capture. So far, so good. I think if I hit OK, it'll do it. But anyway, ASIO is the route to go. And then the driver I'm going to use is Audient. And then I have all these options available. Wow, 10 inputs total. And 4 total outputs. And what I'll normally do, alright, I'll just set this up as if I were using this thing to the max. So I'll go all 10 inputs. I'll do all 4 outputs. I'll check this request sample rate and request block size 128. It's the lowest it goes for 96 kilohertz. And then if I hit ASIO configuration, well, it won't do anything right now, but if this was not open, it would open this up, and then I would basically just set my buffer size. I think automatic works, but I would set this down to 128, and then the sample rate I would normally do 96 kilohertz. And then I'll hit OK. But I'm not going to do that because it won't work. Normally I have this on direct sound whenever I do screen capture tutorials. And I'm going to change this to Audient just to double check. And 24-bit. And I'll change this to 2048. It has to be in multiples of 16. So your normal, basically this needs to match the numbers that are here. See, 64, 128, 256, 512. I've worked with these numbers so much over the years that I'm used to them, except for like the higher ones. But like 64 through 2048, I know by heart. But yeah, just match that. I like to do 2048 just because it's running off of the regular hardware. It's not as stable as ASIO. So 2048 usually works fine. Okay, and I do not have a Reaper 5 license, so I get the nag screen. I'll probably buy this one day, but I don't really have a need for it right now. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is change my theme by going to Options, Themes, and then Default 3.0. And then the second thing I'm going to do, you see this little area right here between the bars, and it turns the mouse arrow into like a double arrow. I'm going to drag this up until it snaps. So right at this point, it's like the maximum window height. Okay, so I'm going to go to File, Project Settings, or I can do Alt-Enter. Under this menu, I'm going to check Project Sample Rate, and then I can either change my tempo right here, which I'll just leave it at 120 for now, and I can also change these settings. Sometimes I do Extreme. Actually, the old version in Reaper 4 was High Quality, or HQ. So I could either do medium. Medium's pretty good for real-time playback, but really my computer is fast enough to handle HQ, possibly even extreme, the new extreme. So I'll do better for this. And then render resample is definitely extreme. And I'm not sure which version of the pitch mode. Elastic is good in general, so I'll just leave it. I'll leave it like that. Now, again, if I was recording 96 kilohertz, my sample rate, just clicking this drop-down menu, I would change it to 96,000 hertz because 96 kilohertz is equal to 96,000 hertz. And then media, make sure 24 bits chosen for your wave bit depth. And I usually leave these blank because I want them to be saved in the project file folder. I think that's great for organization. But if you, for some reason, want all your files to be saved to the same folder, then this is where you can choose that. And you can even have a secondary recording area, which is pretty cool. Another option I usually do is changing this format for Apply FX. And I'll hit Custom, and I'll change the bit depth to 32-bit floating point. And then I'll hit OK. And the default format can be changed as well. For that, I would do 32-bit. Video, well, these are all new to me as far as Reaper's concerned, and I'm not actually using this, so I'm going to leave all this at default settings. These look good. And notes, this is something that a lot of people don't use, but this is good if you're collaborating on a project. You can leave notes for each other, and I would check this box so that whatever you type in here opens up every time you open up the project. Otherwise, the engineer you're collaborating with may not see the notes. So let's see. I'll put this back on 441, and the only reason I'm doing that is because my screen capture software runs at 441, so it may not work properly if I have it set to anything else. All right. For some reason, it's still showing that the audio device is not working. I'm not sure if that's the screen capture software or what. So what I'm going to do is actually stop recording right now and change this and see if it'll work. And would you look at that? It actually did work. As soon as I closed Camtasia, my screen capture software, it worked. So I have all of my device settings right here. Now again, normally I would use ASIO, but because of the screen capture software, I have to use direct sound. Okay. So we set up our hardware, we set up the project. There's one more thing that needs to be done before we start adding tracks and recording and all that, and that is to save the project to a good folder. I'm a little OCD about this, but that's because I have hundreds of thousands of files over the years that I've made. So organization is my top priority. So what I'm going to do, I just hit Control S, but you can also go to File, Save Project. I'm going to find my production folder, and then I'll name this Reaper. By the way, I have to censor things because this is all clients and other projects I'm working on that can't be out there in the public yet. So I'm going to call this Reaper tutorial. And now I can show you what's on screen here. Okay, so I'm going to create a new folder within Reaper tutorial. Reaper tutorial was basically my band's name or my musician's name. So within that, I'm going to call this Song 1. And then within that, I'm going to call this vocals because that's all I have for instrument-wise I can do right now. And then I'll double-click that, and inside this, I'll call this Song 1-vocals. All right? Which actually doesn't make any sense because I have no music to put this on under. Again, this is just a simple basics tutorial video, but it should get you started on how to get everything working. Okay. Now that I have my project saved, the first thing I'm going to do is add a new track. Now, there's several ways to do that. My favorite way is to do Control-T on the keyboard by default, and that adds new tracks. Just keep holding Control and pressing T, and see how quickly I can add new tracks? Now, I'm hitting Control Z to undo that because I only want 2 tracks. Okay. So, the first thing I can do, where this meter is, I'm going to click it and change my input to mono left, which it already is. So if I click it again, it's just going to stay on that. All right. And then I'm going to change my second track to mono right. Now, under ASIO, this would actually be labeled like analog 1 through ADAT8. But for this, because it's under direct sound, it's just labeled left and right. Okay, now before I hit record arm, I'm going to double click and name this track left channel. And track 2 is going to be named right channel. And then my next step is to hit record arm, which is this button right here. Click it. And then I'm going to click this one as well. Nothing's plugged into my second XLR input, so there's nothing actually going in except noise. But yeah, anyway, you can actually see that on the IDE control panel, which I just brought up. I normally have this window open, or minimized, I should say, just because I access it so much with like controlling volume when I'm watching YouTube videos or whatever. I always have this available to control. Okay, as you can see, as I'm talking, the meter's going. So you're probably wondering, well, at this point, I can see the meter going, but I can't hear anything. Oh, by the way, if you don't see the meter going, that's because you probably haven't put your preamp or your gain knob up to where it needs to go. I always recommend peaking between -18 and -12, as you can see right here. Now, it's sometimes it's lower, sometimes it's higher, but somewhere around this area will be a good level. Don't try to push it past. Really, -12 is the most I like going. And I'll link to a video about proper recording levels so you can understand why that is. But anyway, there's 2 options I can do to listen to what I'm recording, because right now you can't hear it. More than likely, you can't hear what's actually being monitored, I should say. It's not being recorded yet, but what will be recorded. And that is to click this button right here. Again, depending on what theme you use for Reaper, it'll be different, but that's why I love theme 3.0, because it's just laid out very logically. I'm used to it. I grew up with it. You know, I've been using this theme for 8 years. Anyway, hit this button right here. It looks like a speaker. And right now it's on off. If I click it once, it's on. If I click it again, it goes to auto mode. And basically what that does is you may be hearing an echo of me right now. But anyway, when you record, it's activated. But when you hit playback, it disables it. So auto mode works pretty well, but I would not use it. Here's why. I'm going to click it off right now. Whenever you're recording something, even if you're using ASIO and you have a very low latency, there's still going to be a slight delay when you're doing what's called audio monitoring, software monitoring. That's why what you want to do is actually go to your audio interfaces control panel and monitor with that. So right now I have this muted. That's because I don't want to echo in my audio. But if I unmute it, let's hear what it does. Check, check, check. I actually can't hear it right now because I just realized this is actually down. Check, check, check. Check. If I bring it up, I can hear it. Check, check. Yeah, I can definitely hear it now. All right. So you want to monitor with this because there's going to be the slightest bit of delay. Definitely better than software monitoring. You're going to do it directly from your device. Now, that again, that's just for your inputs. If you have tracks that you're already recording with, you have to monitor with software. Now, the fortunate thing is most of your DAWs, your digital audio workstation, the software that you use to record with is called a DAW, D-A-W. That will have compensation built in so that if there is a slight delay, whatever you're recording will be adjusted after you stop recording. So you don't have to worry about that being an issue, okay? Not all of them have that. They should, but if they don't, you should notice it right away that your timing will be off. Although it shouldn't be disastrous, really. But yeah, you have to monitor it that way. And in that case, you're going to be under the Audient interface. Now, again, your interface software will look different from mine, but similar. And that's where I have, it's actually labeled DAW 1+2. So my default hardware output is going to this. And I'll show you that later. But you want to make sure this is obviously unmuted. There's no reason it shouldn't be. Now, if you have two outputs like the Audient it has a headphone output and it has a speaker output. And so it actually has two options, plus DAW 3 and 4, that's your second output. So I would actually, if I wanted to use this, I would hit that up. I actually held Alt and clicked it, but I'm going to reset it right now. And that would actually get set up with these options down here where it says IO. And then I would actually add another hardware output. So I would do, oh, you know what? I can't do it here for some reason. Oh yeah, it's because I'm using the direct sound, not ASIO. So I can't do it right now. But you'll just have to trust me that it works like that. And to add extra hardware outputs, you have to go within that menu. Okay, now I'm still not ready to record because let's assume we're recording music. Well, if you're recording drums, rhythm guitar, etc., then a metronome, aka a click track, is something that you would want to use. That will allow you to keep on rhythm, and so you're not second guessing yourself on whether or not somebody else was staying in rhythm. Not everybody likes to play to a click track, but I highly recommend it, and I highly recommend learning how to play to a click track. And that option is actually this icon right here, which looks like a hardware metronome, like an old school one. So if you click this with your left mouse button, it enables it, but then if you right click it, you have all your options come up. And these are awesome options, by the way. So the first option is to either enable or disable it. So as you see, while this is being checked or unchecked, that light is turning on and off up there. So I'm going to enable it for right now. And then we have our options. These are all basically self-explanatory, but the ones I want to focus on are the count in before recording, which is a feature I use. And what I'll do is I'll actually click this and then change the count in measures to 1. So that means that my musician will be instructed that don't play on measure 1, don't play on measure 2, start on measure 3. And the reason you want to do that is because it gives enough space for the recorder to start where it needs to start. And you'll see that in a second. The other thing I might adjust is the volume of this. So I might actually put this to like, I don't know, this one to 6 at the top. And then this one to 0. And that's mainly because my headphone amplifier in the Audient interface isn't as loud as I would like it to be sometimes. Sometimes you're also recording very loud instruments and you need it to be louder. So that's usually what I have it set to, 0 and -6, maybe even like -1 and 6, just so it's not like 0 super loud. Anyway, you can also have your own custom metronome samples, which is nice. And in Reaper 5, they added this option which allows you to set the actual frequency. I believe this is a new option, but correct me if I'm wrong on that. And then we also have other options, random stuff. You can do pre-roll. You can disable the metronome while you're doing playback. That's actually a really nice feature to have disabled. So, yeah. Now it's time to hit record finally. There's 2 ways to do that by default. You can either hit this button right here, or as you see on the mouse over, you can hit Control+R. So I'm going to do that right now, Control-R. Boom! 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 Alright, so I hit space to stop it. And I have 2 tracks that were recorded, as you can see. And I have a few options. I can either hit save all, I can rename, I can delete just whatever I select, or I can delete all. I'm going to save all for right now. The reason they give you that option is because a lot of times you'll hit record, you'll mess up. Well, what's the point in saving that track? It's just going to add more and more space to your hard drive unnecessarily, right? Because right now, if I go to the project folder, let me see what happens. Okay. So under the project folder, right now we have the project file itself. Then we have the 2 WAV files that we just recorded. And the Reaper peak file that goes along with it. So there's no reason that if I screw a take up and I don't want that take, that it needs to happen like that, right? Now here's another cool thing you can do. This is actually something that I've done, is make it so that I can stop recording with 1 key. Actually 2 keys. So under the actions menu, click that and then go to show action list. Up here under filter, you're going to type in stop record, REC. And we have this description right here. Transport, stop, delete all recorded media. Click that. And then down here where it says shortcuts for selected action, hit add. And then my action is shift space. And then I'm going to hit OK. So now when I hit shift and space, let's see what happens. I'm going to hit close. And then I'm going to actually start recording down here. So what I'm doing right now is I'm hitting the home key to go to the start, but I want to go to the end here. So I'm going to hit the end key. So it puts my, I'm going to call it the edit cursor at the very end of the track, at the very end of the recording. And I'm going to, again, record arm, both of these tracks. And then I'm going to hit Control R to start recording. Whoa. Oh, that's right. I had the count in. I forgot about that. So again, guys, it's great to have the count in sometimes, but sometimes you do want to start recording immediately. For this, I do want to have it on though, just so that when I'm recording, I have something to reference. Control R. Okay, so this is what I'm recording, and I can hear the metronome. You can actually disable that on your hardware if you want to. But right now I'm going to hit shift and space so you guys can see what I just did. Look at that. It goes away. So again, I'm going to hit record, Control R. And then shift and space. See that? That is an awesome feature to use because a lot of times you know the take was bad. Your musician's like, I messed up. And instead of having to click 3 things, you press 1 thing. This is a big time saver. All right. So now that we've recorded something, and it's just me going boom, boom, boom. So I just hit home, by the way. I'm like, I'm sorry if I'm like moving stuff around. I'm just so used to doing things. So I can either click like down here, or if I don't have enough open tracks, I can click here anytime. Right now, snapping is on. If I wanted to disable that, it's this magnet looking icon right here. So I can click that and I can go anywhere I want in between the bars. If snapping's on, I can only go on a per bar basis, per tempo basis. If I wanted to change the tempo, right here, double click that and change it to like, I don't know, 160. Now, because I changed the tempo after I already recorded something, this will actually shift in pitch. Listen to this. Boom! Boom! So, if you don't want that to happen, where you messed up the tempo for some reason, now, rarely are you going to change the tempo after the fact. But if you have to, go to File, Project Settings, and then under here it says Time Base for items, envelopes, and markers. Change this to time, and then hit OK. And then when I change this, it should stay the same. It looks like it did. Boom! Boom! Yep, okay, so that's how you do it. I actually have a tutorial just for that, but that is how you do it in case you change your tempo. Now, here's some other basic things that you can remember. Now, number one, if I click a track and I want to click another track, I just hold Control and click it. And the reason you will want to do something like that is, well, what if you want to like trim the end off of something? Well, you select it, you select both of these, and then on the edge, you put your mouse arrow on the edge, click and drag to the left, and on this edge, you can click and drag to the right. And then the final step you do is to click somewhere in the middle here and hold and drag. All right, now you don't want to be messing with this while you're in the middle of recording stuff, but if you need to do some kind of editing, that's how you do that. The other thing you can do is split your tracks. Again, I can either select one of these, and the default key for splitting is S, and that makes 2 regions, 2 items. And again, if I hit Control Z to undo that, and I select both of these tracks with Control and click, and then I hit S, it splits both of the tracks. All right. I actually have this changed to C. Again, under the Actions menu, I can do, I think it's split. Yep, there it is. So S over here, I actually have the C button is the other shortcut that I use. And that's just because in my video editing software, I have cut set to C, so it works. The other cool thing that Reaper has is this fader option. So let's say you want to fade something at the end of the track. You can go up in the upper right corner here. And I believe it's on the upper left as well. So I'll do a fade in. Let's do a fade in, all right? So I'm going to click this. See how it changes the mouse arrow to that, like, it's got a fade icon. It's hard to see it from far away, but if you click it and drag over, see what happens? It fades it in. Now here's the other cool thing. I can actually change the shape of the fade by right-clicking. Oops. Where'd it go? There we go. I got to right-click that. Okay. So once it's over here, you have to actually click it there. So then I can see how I can change it to all these different fade shapes. I like this one. It's pretty cool. And then again, just like with cuts, if you want to do it to both, you have to have both of them selected. Right-click it and change it. And there you have it. So it'll fade in my little boom sound. Boom! Oh, let me disable the metronome for now. Boom! Slight fade. If I drag it over a little bit more, you can hear it better. Boom! 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 That's actually good. You guys hear the metronome was actually recorded because I'm monitoring everything with my speakers. This is why whenever you're recording something, wearing headphones is very important so you don't have click track bleed into your sound. And I always recommend drum headphones, even for singers. As much as I love my Sony MDR 7506 headphones, it definitely bleeds. So I use my direct sound drummer headphones whenever I can, really, because they isolate a lot better than the Sonys. All right. If you're still awake out there, I think I'm going to do some exporting now. Oh, by the way, guys, if you notice I was zooming in and out sometimes, there's 2 ways to do that. I use my scroll wheel on my mouse to zoom in and out here. You can also do it over here by clicking. You can also adjust the track width by selecting both of your tracks and then clicking the plus and minus over here. That makes your stuff look bigger. That's what she said. Anyway, I'm going to render this out. File, render. Now, this is complicated the first time you use it, and the second time. You get used to it, though. Okay, first, let's just go at the very top. My source. I want the master mix. I want everything rendered down. I don't want to screw around with stems or any of this stuff. I just want what I hear coming out of the project. So master mix it is. My bounds will be the entire project. You could also do time selection, which basically just means you're going to click up here where the time code is and then drag. And then it'll change the time selection by default, but if you already have this dialog box open, you have to change it manually. But time selection, if I just want to render, from there to there and not include this, that's not highlighted. But for right now, I'm going to deselect that. I hit escape and clicked out, and I'm going to put this back on entire project. So I have some options here. You can have what's called a tail, and it's down to the millisecond. I don't want tails, so I deselect that. And so my directory, I'm going to put it on the D drive. If I hit browse, I can also select it that way. Actually, I could do my production folder. Let's do the production folder. Wildcards are cool. You can do like item name, track name, all kinds of stuff. The tempo. Oh man, it's crazy. The amount of options that Reaper gives you for the wildcards is incredible. But I don't want any right now. I just want it to be called the project name, which is what it defaults to, which is song 1-vocals. Okay, under the options, I have sample rate, which is going to be my default project sample rate. Stereo for channels. I could also do mono, or I could do surround sound. Over here, I usually leave it on full speed offline, but 1x offline works if I have like a MIDI track playing. For some reason, MIDI doesn't always work with full speed, so you might want to do either 1x offline or online render. And then we also have, I usually leave this checked. Again, I normally use 96 kilohertz, so it works well. If for some reason your sample rates are not all the same, I would leave this set to Extreme HQ. There's no reason with modern processors to have it on the lower settings. Unless you are in like a super time crunch and you want things out like immediately. In that case, choose the lowest quality one, which is point sampling. But I think that's stupid to save a few seconds, So Extreme HQ it is. There's other self-explanatory options. Now, if I had 24-bit files that were going to 16-bit, it'll appear if I change my wave bit depth to 16-bit. These two options I would select if I don't have any other plugins. So select those two for the master mix, dither, and noise shaping. I'm not going to get into depth about what those are, but if you're going from 24-bit to 16-bit, then yes, choose those two. But we're going to keep this at 32-bit floating point for now. Output format, you have a ton of options. Wave, FLAC, and MP3 are the ones I usually use. Opus is another good one. Opus is better than MP3, but it's not widely supported right now. But Opus is better. And FLAC is your lossless format. So in order of quality, it goes Wave and FLAC are the same quality. And then Opus, and then MP3. WavePack is also equal to FLAC. And then finally we have, oh wow, there's a lot more options than I'm used to. So I'll do Wave again, 32-bit, and just keep all these defaults the same. And I usually do not embed a project tempo. If you really want to tell somebody what the project tempo is, you can just say, 120 BPM in parentheses for the file name. And we can either render it right now, or we can add it to our render queue, which is a nice feature that Reaper has. I'm going to do render one file, which by the way, if you want, you can hit save changes and close. and then go to File, Project Settings, Save as Default Project Settings, and now your render options will be the same until you change that again, until you overwrite that. So let's save this right now, render one file, and see what happens. So it's a small little, 6-second thing, so it rendered like lightning speed. And then what I'll normally do is just to listen to it, I'll either hit Show in Explorer, or I will hit Launch File. Boom. 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 And that opens up VLC Player or whatever your default audio player is for WAV files. Or I'll hit Show in Explorer, and that'll open up my folder. And as we can see, it is an actual file that I can now email to somebody or upload to Dropbox realistically, because normally your files are not going to be small enough to email. So I can, again, I just played it in VLC, but I'll do it again. Actually, what I'll do is I'll hit Close, File Save As, and then Close All Projects. And then I can actually, what I love about Reaper is you can just drag stuff from Explorer, Windows Explorer, and drop it in, and it creates a new track, and there's the file I just made. Boom. 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 And then here's another cool thing. So if I have multiple tracks I want to drop in, like let's say I have my drums recorded already and I render them out, and I have my electric guitar recorded, I render that out. If I drop all these in at the same time, here's what comes up. It'll say, what do you want to do? Render these, drop them in as a single track or separate tracks. So let me show you what it does with single track. I'll zoom out. So they're all right next to each other. All right. But normally when I do something like this, I will put it as separate tracks. Because again, let's just pretend this is the vocal, this is the guitar, and this is the drum. And notice that all of the starts are equal. They line up no problem, right? That's how it should be. That's what you want. Because ideally, by the time you're finished recording your music, you can drop your files into any DAW that's out there and they will line up perfectly. And if that means that you have 3 minutes of nothing at the beginning of your file, that's what you need to do. That's the way professionals do it. We want to make sure everything is in sync no matter what, and that's how you do it. Again, if you had to have 3 minutes of nothing at the beginning or 3 minutes of nothing after your track rendered out, that's just how it is. Now, you can get away with only having a short track as long as the start of your file starts at the 0 point, which is why we do that pre-roll in the beginning. Like I said, I want to have 2 measures. So if I didn't have that pre-roll option, and I'll disable that, let's see, that, and then I'll disable the count in. I'll put that back to 0. If I don't have the count in, and I just have this going, let's see what happens. So I'm going to wait 2 measures, and then on the 3rd measure, I'm going to do my little boom thing again. Okay, so that's all our stuff right there. And you'll notice I actually did forget to name the track. I forgot to label it Claps. So now the file is actually just called Left Channel. Anyway, that's how you do it. It works well. Doing this 2-measure rule is something I've been doing for years, and I highly recommend it. So that's it, guys. I have nothing else to say about this. This is, I hope this helped any of you guys who are brand new to using Reaper or to recording music in general with your home studio or wherever you're recording. Once you do it enough times, it is very easy to do, but I would highly recommend checking out the other videos that are on this channel, because there's a lot to do out there, and I made playlists specifically for people who are brand new to people who are experienced, and I made them in order of experience level. So I'm going to actually link to that in the video description. It's called like Recording 101, Recording 201, and Mixing 101 and Mixing 201. So it's all good video tutorials in order of experience level. And this one's definitely going to go towards the top of Recording 101 because it is very basic, but it's very important that you understand how to do this so that when it comes time to recording either yourself or somebody else, you're not worried about will this work or not. So again, make sure that your hardware settings are on ASIO to your whatever you're using, and make sure these options are, make sure you're looking at every option available to you and making sure that your hardware, now maybe you don't need all these inputs. Maybe you only need input number 1. And if you want to do that, you can, you can disable the hardware because, if you don't need it, you don't need it. But unfortunately, I can't show you that on screen due to the hardware limitations of my screen capture software. But I think I taught you guys enough, and I've probably bored some of you, but that's just how it goes. This has been Adam for RealHomeRecording.com. Have fun recording, and I'll see you in the next video.